Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's lovely to see you all here, and welcome to those watching online as well. It's all working, apparently. My name is Elise Talaran, and I'm the convener of Yes for EU.
My name is Andrea Pisauro. I am the co-coordinator of Europe for Scotland.
This evening and the whole project has been, remember your mic, has been a very fruitful collaboration between our two organisations. Yes for EU, on the one part, we are a Scottish-based group of activists of all parties and none, and we campaign for independence and EU membership for Scotland. Andrea will tell you more about Europe for Scotland in a moment. There is also information on the stall in the foyer. I'm going to start this evening by thanking a few individuals and organisations which have made this project possible. Firstly, we wouldn't be here without the amazing help and infectious energy of Valentina Cervera-Clavel from the Greens EFA group in the European Parliament. She was instrumental in organising meetings with MEPs, so we're very, very grateful to her. And if you are watching now tonight, Valentina, a big, big thank you from all of us. Also, special mention to Paul, also in Brussels, who I am sure is watching just now, because he told me. We wouldn't be here either without the huge input from Marlene and Fiona from Scottish Independent Podcast, who came with us to Brussels, and they are responsible for the amazing footage that you're going to see tonight. So thank you very much, both of you, for your support. And a wee note to say that you can watch the whole podcast of our trip to Brussels on the YouTube channel of Scottish Independent Podcast from this Wednesday, 14th of May. Is that correct? Yeah. In the room with us tonight, we also have Heather Anderson and Alan Smith, who joined our Brussels delegation. They are two former SNP MEPs, and they helped us, make sure that the impact, our trip was more impactful. So thank you very much for being here and for your support as well. And Heather and Alan will be on stage throughout the evening, and they will be available for questions as well, so you'll hear more of them tonight. Also asking questions tonight is Assa Samake Roman, freelance journalist and national columnist, and she will also be coming to the stage and helping in the proceedings. So thank you very much, Assa, for agreeing to get involved. Thank you. And finally, we are delighted to welcome to our event Scottish Government Minister, CoCab Stewart, the Equalities Minister and former Europe Minister. Thank you. CoCab is here to listen to the voices that we have brought back from Brussels, but also to all of us in this room. And she will respond in a short speech towards the end of this evening. So thank you very much, Minister, for your participation. Just a few more pieces of information. The project was backed up financially by the Scottish Independence Foundation and the Coppetiers Foundation in Brussels. We are also grateful to Stuart Bremner for his wonderful artwork here, and to Believe in Scotland for all their support. Last but not least, there are no fire alarm drills scheduled for this evening, so if you hear the alarm, please follow the fire exit signs towards the back of the room and across into the street. And the toilets are on your left when you go back into the foyer. We're not going to do a refreshment break, so just feel free to go at any time. There's also a wee door here that you can go through. On the screens, you see an overview of how the evening will proceed. There will be a chance for you to ask questions of our panel at about 7:10. And at the end, we will ask you for your feedback, so don't miss this chance to continue the conversation with us. If you have to leave sharp, we are probably going to run over about 10 minutes. If you have to leave sharp at 8 o'clock, please do so, but remember to give us some feedback before you go. Before I pass on the mic to Andrea, we have a special message for you from a very prominent MEP. We were very lucky to meet in Brussels. Her name is Terry Reinke. She's from Germany, and she wanted to say this to you.
Hey friends from Scotland, happy Europe Day. And as you might know, it's not only the day of Europe today, but also my birthday. So it's always a double reason for me to be very, very happy. And I wanted to send you a quick message just saying that we still miss you, we still love you. And of course, we would love to have you back in the European Union. We see the world around us at the moment, and I think it's becoming more clear than ever that we have to work together as closely as possible, and for that Europe has to move closer together, and of course having Scotland back in the European Union would be fantastic to do that. I wish all of you a great event, fantastic discussions, but also great festivities for this Day of Europe.
Over to you, Andrea. Sorry. No. Thank you. That was me. Over to you, Andrea.
Thank you, Liz, and happy Europe Day, everyone. So it's really fantastic to speak after this energetic salute of one of the most brilliant MEPs in Brussels. Terry Reinke was also the Green candidate for the European Commission presidency in the last European elections. She's really a trailblazer and a good friend of Scotland and of our campaign. So if she or some from her team are perhaps following us live, I think you may all want to join me in wishing her a very happy birthday.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to Terry. Happy birthday to you. All right, she didn't expect that, probably. So, friends, today is an important day for Europe. 75 years ago, the French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman put forward a bold idea. Unite Europe by pooling coal and steel production to make war unthinkable and materially impossible. He used these very words in a declaration timed to coincide with the 5th anniversary of the end of the war in 1950. Political and economic cooperation to overcome the tragedies of the Second World War and of the Nazi-fascist dictatorship that started it. That was the beginning of the journey that brought European countries together in freedom and democracy within the European Union. This is why Europeans from all across Europe are celebrating today a day of unity, peace, and solidarity. How sad that the UK has left that journey. How sad that Europe Day is not celebrated anymore in England. And how beautiful it is that we celebrate it today in Scotland, here in Edinburgh, in many other cities. Oh, okay, I need to hurry up. So we should all really be grateful that war in the EU has really become unthinkable. But I will also ask you to think about the countries outside the EU where war keeps raging. In Gaza, where the shameful support of the UK government to the crimes against humanity of Netanyahu's army tragically continues. In Ukraine, where the Ukrainians keep suffering Putin's criminal invasion. And in Yemen, in many other countries in the world, and now even between India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers. So may peace be with all of you, as the Pope said yesterday in Rome, my hometown. And let's all try to do our bit to defend a future of peace for Europe and the world. Now, picking an American progressive Pope perhaps is the way of the Catholic Church to deal with Trump. And we'll see how that will play out. What we already know, my friends, is that the way Labour government is dealing with Trump is not playing out well at all. They keep pushing, they keep pretending to be Trump's best pal, and Trump keeps doing as he's pleased. So I know that time is running short, so I want to talk about the project and say that while we know that it's very dangerous what's happening with Starmer sinking and Farage growing, we want to discuss something else. We want to show you a number of irrefutable pieces of evidence that members of the European Parliament from several different countries would really be happy if an independent Scotland was to rejoin the EU. They were happy to state publicly that Scotland will always be welcome, and very much agree with us that it would be both good for Europe and good for Scotland. Some of these MEPs have previously signed our commitment to welcome an application from Scotland that we put to them in the last European elections, and I take this chance to thank our brilliant activist Sara De Santis, that is probably listening to us. Ciao, Sara. And also of the European Intellectuals that signed our open letter in 2021. Since then, 16,000 citizens have joined them, and our campaign has continued to express solidarity with Scotland as we did after the Supreme Court judgment in 2022. And you might have seen some pictures of activists in Paris, Rome, Brussels, expressing solidarity with Scotland that day. So we are very happy to each and every one of them. I want to also briefly thank Jane McNinnon and Nina Yette, who are part of our delegation in Brussels. We are, of course, very happy to work with Yes4You, and we will keep reminding Europe that Brexit must not be Scotland's destiny. Crucially, we will keep doing that in the European institutions in Brussels, where we will go every year until a referendum on independence finally happens. So our aim, which from tonight becomes also your aim, is to let as many Scots as possible know that Europeans would love to welcome Scotland back. So without further ado, join us in our journey to the European Parliament to see with your own eyes what the MEPs have got to say to you.
In action. Take that, Brexiters. I couldn't vote. No, of course. That's, well, our votes weren't considered.
So we are on the 15th floor.
15th.
It is a beautiful view.
Oh, fabulous. So, Andreas, excited to be here at long last?
Very much excited. It's a lovely day, a bit cold to be honest.
It's cold, yeah, it's cold, but it's
yeah. You can see this big democracy in action here in front of the Altiero Spinelli building of the European Parliament.
Yeah. So did you see a couple of people already, MEPs?
Yes, we saw two MEPs yesterday, Brando Benifei from the Socialists and Democrats group and Per Holmgren from the Greens. Yeah. Brando is Italian and Per is Swedish.
And that went well?
It went very well. They were very interested to know the situation with Brexit, what people think in Scotland, and they empathize with the situation, and they understand that Scotland's desire to rejoin the EU matters, so to speak.
Yeah. Were you at the meetings as well?
I was, yes.
Yeah. Enjoy them?
Very much. And I think we found that there is a lot of affection for Scotland, and also that there's some agreement that Scotland should be leading the way in the
That's
UK.
Good. Well, of course, Scots think that there's affection for Scots everywhere. Really, you know, when everyone likes it. On the taxi coming in, I didn't have time to do it. I was just working out how to tell them that we were Scottish. In France, first thing you do is say "Je suis écossaise."
But that's actually something we discussed with some of the MEPs, because one of the things that one of the questions we got, because we got questions,
yes,
we
sure.
didn't just
All right, good.
to ask them, was why is there this different sensibility, political understanding of the world between Scotland and England, and we start talking about history and where you know the fact that Scotland has always been a nation. and is in fact one of the most ancient European nations. And we discussed the trade and the political agreements over the centuries, and there was a lot of interest in, not a superficial discussion about the policy, but deep cultural understanding. I think some of the MEPs are actually very interested in the Brexit process and what happened and what not, and they want to understand it better also from the perspective of a Scottish person.
So that's great.
Oh, that's lovely. Guys, in the photo. Okay. Wait, yes, you come in.
See, Scotland.
Scotland.
In Europe.
Yeah. Scotland the brave. In Brussels. Scotland. Hello. Very emotional moment here from our parliament.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Emma was saying to Heather, it's just quite emotional.
It is. You really
There's
can
a lot
feel
of crying on these steps, crying when we got here, crying when we left, crying when we took that famous photo with all the candles to keep the light on.
Keep the light on.
Yeah,
for
so
Scotland.
it's terrible.
Yeah.
And behind us, democracy in action, and we've had our democracy denied.
That's right. That's why when we made sure we came for that last month, it was saying this is a democratic deficit for Scotland if we are not at the table to vote against the withdrawal agreement, which is what we managed to do. Yeah, we should not be standing on the outside.
Is this your first time back in the area
Yeah.
since? Yeah.
I'm sort of a bit surprised how emotional I felt as we
Yes.
walked up here.
Just walking in the
kind of
back
thought
actually
I might,
means-
but I
And look at badges.
just look at that.
Hope we get to keep those.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're taking a photograph of it.
I love the country, I love people. I'm very passionate for Scotland, yes. For history. Yeah.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. We want to come back.
Yeah, we
It's
want.
possible
Oh,
That was nice.
that was lovely.
It was all started.
Yeah, actually, just standing here holding this is a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah, we could just say we're standing here greeting for Scotland.
Yeah.
Friendly Italian chap who supports Scotland being back in the EU. Yeah, thank you.
for you. Go Scotland.
Thank you. So that was a totally impromptu meeting with this Italian guy. So I'd like to welcome to the stage at this point Heather, Alan, and Asa. And we'll do an interview style. Asa will be interviewing Alan and Heather about their experience, the whole trip at this point. So just come on stage. And yeah, Asa, if you sit in the middle.
I'm allegedly shorter than you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Really delighted to be here. The first few minutes of the documentary you've just seen takes us back to Brussels, which is, let's take a minute first to appreciate the city. I love Brussels personally. I was a bit jealous that you got to go, and I've been longing to go for a long time. But it's also a city that represents a lot, definitely, here in Scotland. It represents a political aspiration, and this is what we're here to talk about tonight, and why we have this aspiration, and what do we do to see it being realized. So Heather, Alan, thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight. I want to start with the beginning. Why did you say yes to taking part in this project? What motivated you, Heather?
Well, these two mad women over here, we did an event, well, with Sam and the rest, we did an event a year and a bit ago about should we rejoin the European Union or be in EFTA? Like, is that really a question? And so we had this great day in this very room, and I'm a working councillor, so it was great to get a day to be here talking about Europe and the enthusiasm we had for being back in the European Union. So when they got in touch with me to say, would I like to be part of this project, I was delighted. Really delighted to be there.
Alan, how did you get involved in the first place?
Well, anything to do with Scotland and the EU, I'll be there. Yes. It's absolutely part of my political DNA that Scotland should be part of the EU. And if it comes to, I think that applies for the UK as well. And I'm Vice President of the European Movement in Scotland. And the European Movement in Scotland, it's Scottish politics. We all wear lots of hats. Let's relax about that. The European Movement in Scotland has an absolutely neutral view in the Constitution. Some people believe in independence, some people don't, but we all believe in being back in the EU. But I'm an art. I believe in independence, and I believe independence is the best way back into the EU. So what we need to do is to make sure that we all work together where we can, and if we disagree round the edges, but the big prize is that if we get Scotland back into the EU, it will put rocket boosters on our recovery from COVID as a society, because we get back into the structural funds and the single market and freedom of movement. For our universities, it'll be absolutely existential because they get back into Horizon Europe and all the rest of that, and it will be just so positive. And one brief example of it, recently the newly announced trade deal with India and the UK, I mean, fantastic, £4.8 billion a year in 5 years, hypothetically. Magic. We'll need 27 of those to get back to where we were from leaving the EU. So the big thing that we can all of us do cross-party, and I pride myself on, I'm a nut, everybody knows I'm a nut, I'm pro-independence, but I can also work with people of different persuasions. And that's where I think we need to put the barriers to one side and work together to say, you know what, if we're serious about getting our economy back on track and our society back on track, getting back into the EU is the way to do that. So damn sure I was there, yes.
What was the mood like? What was the mood like among the people that you met there?
Well, I think when we started planning this, we were a bit apprehensive because there was quite a lot going on. You know, there's Trump's tariffs, there's war on mainland Europe with the illegal invasion of Ukraine. So we thought they've got quite a lot on their minds. You know, will they remember anything about us? So we were a bit tentative. And then as the planning went ahead and we got a positive reaction from Valentina and the team, we became more optimistic. But I think we were blown away when we got there because people were so happy to meet with us, to give us time to turn up, to talk from the steps outside all through the day. So it ended up being an incredibly positive and uplifting day because there are people who do remember Scotland, who want Scotland to be back, who know what we have to contribute. And for us Scots, it's that great thing of we have to see ourselves as others see us sometimes. And when you go to Europe, you realise that they don't read the Courier. So they think very highly of us. The Courier's a Dundee paper that's not very pro-independence. And I think the other great thing about this trip was that it was a grassroots organised event. Yeah. You know, so it was from the bottom up and it was to do with personal contacts and people reaching out and, you know, doing the work for nothing in their own time, making it all happen, get the funding to get us there. So the atmosphere was absolutely, well, you saw us, we just cry all the time. Every time we turn up Mass Square, we start crying and getting emotional.
And were you in any way surprised by the reactions that you got, by the conversations and the level of engagement there was with the idea of Scotland being back in the EU?
I actually was, and you're going to find, folks, I'm afraid you're going to find furious agreement between me and Heather tonight. That we do agree on so much of this stuff, but I've been really conscious with my conversations with folks in Brussels over the last COVID period, basically, that Brexit happened, or was perceived to happen in 2016. It actually happened in 2019, and then COVID happened. So we all lost touch. And the European Parliament has a turnover of around about 50% every election, every 5 years, because the European Parliament is the sort of place where you go to at the start of your career, the end of your career, and 50% is not an unusual turnover. The last election was 60% of a turnover. So many of my go-to guys back in Brussels, my friends, my pals who I've been working with for years, weren't there anymore. They were back in Madrid or Barcelona or Slovenia, wherever it was. But Brussels as a whole has changed quite markedly. And the big thing that came across from all of these meetings was we need to hear more from you guys. Yep. They want to hear and need to hear a granular engagement with the challenges that the European continent is facing be that on energy security, be that on defence, be that on all sorts of other stuff, which is not necessarily an easy discussion. You know, it's easy to say, yeah, we like Europe, Europe's great. What have we got? And what Scotland's got is massive energetic resources, massive fisheries resources, world-class universities, a pro-EU population, and we want to be part of this and help stuff to happen. That is incredibly powerful, especially when so much of the rest of the UK, and it grieves me deeply, and I've already said I want to see the UK back in the EU. I just take that as given. I just don't see the UK doing that anytime soon, which is why I think independence in Europe is the best future for Scotland, and then we can help the UK to get real about our place in the world collectively as the British Islands, and actually work with our continent towards the challenges that we're facing. But that's an unusual message. And one of the things that, again, struck me in Brussels was that so many UK organisations say, oh, well, we need to think about Washington now, we need to think about other places. And actually that just means that the conversation in the UK gets narrower and smaller and less diverse. There is a huge thing going on in Brussels that is not happening with our input, and we need to make sure that happens. Yes. And it's not just about Scotland wants to be part of this, it's that we've got lots of things that will make your discussion better. Because it's not just about what we get, it's about what we bring to the table of the European project, and I say that quite deliberately.
And I think that thing about one of the reasons why we're still in the United Kingdom is that some people in Scotland don't believe that Scotland is incredibly rich in natural resources, in ingenuity, in skills, that we've got this phenomenal wealth, this phenomenal contribution, but that is seen in Europe. So while us being an asset in the UK is hidden from us and disclosed, disguised, so that people don't see it, in Europe they do recognise us as this huge asset and this huge ally, and they are quite open about wanting us to be there. So it's to see ourselves as others see us.
This is an incredibly relevant time to have this conversation about, you know, being part of Europe and what Europe can do, what Europe can be for. And you said something very interesting. It's also about talking about what Scotland can bring to the table. And I say this as a European citizen, and also seeing the debates about Europe happening in France, you know, and I see this, you know, Europe come more and more in political debates. People are trying to maybe redefine what Europe can be. And I think this is a really interesting time, and there's a word that keeps coming back, that's independence, sovereignty. Yep. And I think that aligns really well with, you know, Scottish independence.
Yes, and I think one of the things that they said repeatedly is, in Scotland you're Democrats, you believe in democracy, you believe in the rule of law. So we've got all these core values that we share with Europeans, which at the moment in the UK are under threat and being challenged. So we're seen as a safe haven, a good companion who they can rely on to support the core values of the European Union. That was very refreshing. So again, ironically, they see us as Democrats. Because we're Democrats, we're still in a situation where our democracy is being denied, and trying to find a way to articulate our democracy without it being denied us.
How do you think, Ellen, the EU is coping with this moment? Do you think it's rising to the moment?
Oh, of course, yeah.
In parts, the EU has always evolved through crisis. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it's a nice calm period, nothing exciting happens, and we're now in a very exciting, for good and bad reasons, goodness, dimension. And Europe is being, the EU is being asked to solve problems that it doesn't have the power to solve. And the tension of the EU has always been, and I was in the European Parliament for 300 years, however long it was, it was always, the member states didn't want to give the power to Brussels, and Brussels wanted the power but didn't have it, but kind of pretended that it did. And that was where on energy security, which I think is one of the biggest pressing problems for the European continent right now, the Hampton Court Summit in 2008 under the UK presidency, all the member states got together and said, yes, we need to work much more closely on European integration, on energy and resources and that sort of stuff. And then none of them did. And then all of them, particularly the Central Eastern European end of the continent, were reliant on Russian gas because it was easy. It was also, the more we're engaged with Russia, the less likely they are to engage to invade us. So in retrospect, it looks hopelessly naive, but there was a logic there, there was. Where I was always, and I was on the Energy Committee at the time, where I was saying, look, renewable energy is indigenous energy. If you can make energy from solar panels on your roof, you're not going to need to import energy from anywhere. So let's do that. Let's retrofit houses. Let's do smart stuff domestically. And they didn't, because the member states held energy policy really tightly to themselves. And I have to say to our friends in the Iberian Peninsula that, well, maybe that wasn't the best thing to do. Because maybe your structures do need to have a wider picture and a wider way of doing things. And that's where, even out with the EU, Scotland is a hugely energetic, resource-rich place. And we have a disproportionate interest in joining up the North Sea, joining up the hydrogen economy, joining up the photovoltaic stuff, because it's not about sunlight, it's about the fact that we get sunshine. It's the fact that we get 16 hours of daylight for several months of the summer, at lots of different periods for the rest of the time. So we have got a huge disproportionate interest from the edge of the European continent in being part of these things and actually saying, you know what, we're the solution to a lot of this stuff. We can help with this. We have got world-leading university research on batteries, interconnectors, tidal, wave, solar, biomass, all the rest of it. We want to be part of what the EU is working on. And I think that is a hugely important thing for us to be part of. And is the EU rising to it? I'm not sure it is, because the people who are in charge of the European Commission are saying, well, now's our chance to get into defence policy. And the idea that the member states are going to give defence policy to the European Union in Brussels is, forgive me, just not going to happen. There might be some joint procurement stuff starts to happen, and I don't think that's a bad thing, but we're not going to see the EU suddenly evolving into a superstate in 5 years' time. What the EU could do really, really good stuff about is actually getting the solidarity across the European countries working together. And where there are energetic things to share, let's do that. Where there are research things to share, let's do that. But the big thing that we need to say to folks across the EU and in Brussels is that we want to be part of this. Who else are we talking to?
Heather, can you believe that the referendum, the Brexit referendum, was nearly 10 years ago? Next year is going to be 10 years. And the world has changed so much. So it feels like it's the challenge really is, how do you make this argument in the times that we are living? You know, the Scottish Parliament elections will be next year. How do we make sure that it's front and center in the political debate in this country as we decide, you know, the direction that you need to take to confront all those challenges?
It's even more important than it was in the referendum. So the case for Europe is stronger. Brexit has failed abysmally. It's cost business and Scotland billions of pounds. So everything, the sunlit uplands never appeared. And Farage and his gang are now blaming someone else. It was all the Europeans' fault before, and now it's someone else's fault. So the promise of leaving Europe has failed. The argument for being in Europe is even stronger. Our links to Europe and our shared values in Europe are completely robust. In the SNP, we have been completely committed to rejoining the European Union. We have never wavered at any point when other parties left the scene of the crime. We have stayed there. So it will be absolutely front and centre in our manifesto. We will be working with anyone else who wants to make that argument. The other parties will have to decide amongst themselves how bold they want to be in the face of reform, but I don't think we will waver at all. It will be absolutely part of the argument. Scotland would be, you know, I remember during that referendum speaking to farmers down in Scottish Borders where I was a councillor, and for the first time, because as you will remember, we were told that we had to stay in the European, we had to vote yes, we had to vote no in the referendum to stay in the European Union, and all the farmers bought into that. And that was the first time when you heard the whole thing about, well, maybe if you have to choose between two unions, I'd rather choose the European Union than this union. So I think we can very clearly, and the UK government keeps saying, well, we shouldn't have to choose between America and Europe. We shouldn't be forced. Well, we're not being forced. We're making an absolutely clear choice about who our allies are, who are the people who share our values, and where we should be absolutely at the heart of the European Union. And our way back in there, the thing that was clear is the only thing that is slowing our accession to the European Union is the fact that we haven't yet sorted out our own sovereignty. So it's not the Europeans who are blocking it, it's our ability to create ourselves as an independent nation. Once we've done that, it will be fast-tracked. That's what they're waiting for.
Mm-hmm. And then, what are the key takeaways of this trip for you, and what happens now?
Well, the key takeaway for me is that I need to be in Brussels more, because I've never had better meal frites. It was great to be back. I love the place. I'm biased. Of course I'm biased. I wasn't always pro-independence. As a student, I volunteered for the Labour Party when I was at law school in Nottingham. That was 300 years ago, to be fair, but I wasn't always pro-independence. My politics constitutionally crystallized when I was doing an internship in Brussels in 1995-96, where the Berlin Wall was not far down. There was a sense that the European continent was reuniting. All of my pals were Slovakian, Slovenian, Polish, whoever else, and countries that had only just got their independence back and viewed EU membership as being absolutely integral to that independence. And that was where the penny dropped for me, because I've always been proudly Scottish, but it was always quite utilitarian as regards the UK Union. I was like, well, we get stuff out of this, we get stuff out of that, we don't really need to choose, so what? In Brussels, that changed, because in Brussels it changed. We have got resources as a country of 5.5 million people that other countries would give their eye teeth for. And that was before we wired up the North Sea for oil and gas and wind and wave and power and tidal baths and all the rest of that. We have got huge resources that we can bring to the European continent, because we're going to need to sell that clean green energy somewhere. So we're going to want to sell that into the European continent as a secure, safe, green European powerhouse. We can't do that in isolation. So we have got a disproportionate interest in what the EU is doing about energy security. We have got, I think, a political imperative, and I think there might be a few people in this room who are in favour of independence within the European Union. Let me give you two numbers, and anybody who knows me knows I don't do numbers very well, but pro-independence sentiment right now is round about 50%-ish, depending on who you ask, how you ask. Pro-EU sentiment in Scotland right now is 72%, solid. And the difference between 50% and 72% is called winning. And I think for those of us in the Yes movement, and I appreciate not everybody is, and that's great, we've got a debate to have, and I wasn't always pro-independence, but an independent Scotland back in the European Union, back in the energy programs, the structural funds, the common fisheries policy, agriculture policy, all the rest of that, will put rocket boosters on our economy and our society in a way that I just don't see the UK managing anytime soon. So where I say, and I'm very open about it, as I've said, I want to see the UK back in as well. I think Scotland has a chance to do something different. And my concern for the UK is that it's going to do something that's different in a negative direction. And it'll take 20 years for the UK to realise that it's not an empire anymore. The Second World War wasn't actually something to go back to. It was a bad time. It was a failure of politics. It was a failure of leadership. And what we need to do in Scotland is to make the progressive argument that says we believe in international solidarity. We believe in working together. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in the rules-based international order at a time when fewer and fewer countries worldwide are actually talking those terms. We can be that voice. We're literally a stone's throw away from Edinburgh University that did so much to write the European human rights legislation. Back at a time when much of Europe, the European continent, was in ruins. We've got a huge thing to organise here, and being back in Brussels and having those conversations just really underlined to me that we need to keep that current, we need to keep that live, we need to make sure that we're talking to people who are making decisions across the EU and wider, that Scotland can be that good news story, that we want to be part of this. We want to be part of something. Look at how fast things changed across the northern arc of the European continent, where post the dreadful upping of the invasion of Ukraine after the annex of Crimea, Sweden and Finland joined the NATO framework in a matter of months. Change happens really slow and then it happens really fast. Norway has got the highest pro-EU sentiment that it's had in 20 years right now. People are seriously talking about Norway joining. Now, Norway can join in an afternoon, goodness me. It might be a bit more complicated for us because we've got that domestic stuff to sort out first, but we have got the opportunity to be part of this discussion. The EU is actively talking about enlargement in a way that it hasn't for 20 years. Now, that enlargement is to the Balkans and to various other places. We need to be part of that picture as well, as does Norway and Iceland. And it won't be one size fits all, it will be whatever works, but we want to be part of something bigger. That's the point. We have got so much good stuff going on and we want to share it.
And we'll talk more about it in the Q&A right after the next bit. Thank you so much, both of you, for this exchange of perspectives.
Okay, my name is Sam, and I am the co-convener of, deputy convener of Yes for EU. And I want to introduce the next video. It features several MEPs who are very keen to be saying nice things about Scotland on camera. Firstly, Thomas Waits from the Austrian Green Party, Vincent Martha Ibanez, which I can't pronounce, from the Spanish Coalition, Olga Perez Vitoria from the European Free Alliance, she's the advisor on culture and education, and then Rina Hajari and Charlotte Burchert from Volt Europe. Okay, thank you.
Could I ask you, first of all, perhaps, do you have a message for the people of Scotland?
I very much regret that Scotland is not part of the European Union anymore. I was enjoying so much working with all the Scottish MEPs here in the House. A very important European voice is missing here in Parliament, and we still keep the seats free, and we're not giving up the hope that you finally manage to rejoin.
Fantastic, thank you. And apart from the matter of our independence, do you see any barriers to Scotland rejoining the European Union?
No, actually not. Scotland has implemented the whole European acquis. You were a master scholar of European standards. Scotland could, if Scotland makes that possible within the UK, Scotland could join in a fast-track procedure. It would take less than 2 years.
Do you feel Scotland will be an asset to the European Union?
Yes, of course. And
you're not allowed to say no to that one.
Yes, of course, and I think it's of course a question of democracy. So because there's the will of democracy in Scotland, and so as you want to be part of you, I do not see why you cannot be part of the European Union. So of course it's an asset, but of course it's a question of democracy.
Would you have a message for the people of Scotland?
I will say that you must continue fighting for democracy and fighting to be a part inside from the European Union, and of course that we are ready to welcome you again, and we want you to come again. So that it could be a pleasure to have you again in the European Union.
What message would you say to people of Scotland about European culture and being a part of it?
Yeah, well, I was in Edinburgh 2 years ago in a mission with the Culture Committee, and it was sad on the one side to see the impact the Brexit was having on the education sector and the cultural sector. Yes. On the other side, it was very motivating to see how thrilled the sector was to meet somebody from the European Union, an institution, in this case the Culture Committee from the European Parliament, And it was interesting, but again, sadly interesting because of the situation. But I understand that Scotland, in my mind, is still part of Europe. I mean, it's a nation that has always been very welcoming, not only to students coming from all over Europe, but only as well to the, let's say, the art sector, the festivals. So it's lose-lose for everybody here. Anyhow, as we said, we need to be to I don't know, work on or create the environment again, so that in the near future this is again a win-win situation and not a lose-lose one as we have now for you and for us here as well.
Thank you very much.
Well, good luck, and we wait for you here. I mean, this is very telling. I think nobody else can say anything else. I mean, this is...
Yeah, it's going up.
What would you say to the young people in Scotland?
Maybe first we feel your pain, because I think Brexit has not only been difficult for that side, for your side, but also for our side. I mean, I studied in the UK. I studied in the UK actually before Brexit and also after Brexit, and for the second time I had to get a visa, and it was all very strange. So I think I can only imagine what it feels like from the other side, where there are so many hurdles now and so many things that are stripped from you as young people in Scotland that we can still enjoy in the EU. So we are waiting for you to come back.
Yes. So what do you think the benefits will come from having our young people back? Because it's not all what's good for Scotland, it's also, is that good for the EU as well?
Of course. Absolutely. I mean, culturally, I think Scotland is a very interesting and very rich place, and having that exchange, and I mean, any cultural exchange is always beneficial for both sides, but having that exchange is something that we're really missing now. It's an integral part of European history and lived still through those people and carried through those people that we cannot reach as easily anymore.
So that's another wee sample of our conversations, and you'll get another one at the end as well. So I'm going to call to the stage Sam from Yes for EU, Andrea from Europe Scotland, and David as well from Yes for EU, and we're going to have a wee panel discussion stroke Q&A. So now is your chance to put questions to our panel. We need more mics, and who would like to get started? We've got one person here. Asa, do you mind picking people in the crowd?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah?
I can
Okay.
absolutely do that. Hi.
Hi, my name is
Can I
Edinburgh.
ask you, first of all, perhaps, do you have a message for the people of Scotland?
I very much regret
I
that
do.
Scotland.
Did that without moving your lips.
Hi, my name is Irina McLean. I represent Belarusian diaspora in Scotland. I always introduce myself saying that I'm Belarusian by birth and Scottish by heart. And I have to say that I use the position of Scotland in Europe very much for purpose of explaining why Belarus should be in Europe. So, you know, I'm not shy of doing that. But what I want to ask today, and Alan, I totally agree with you what you said about being in Brussels, because I can see what we've done as Belarus, you know, as Democratic Forces of Belarus, being in Brussels, being in PACE, you know, Parliamentary Assembly, Council of Europe. If you don't ask, you don't get. We have Belarusian apprentices working in PACE. Why can't we have Scottish apprentices doing the internships and all these things? If you don't ask, you don't get. I think this is absolutely the time to get in there. And that's my question to all members, but mainly to Alan, you and Heather. Looking at demographics, nothing detrimental. I'm 45, I own it. But how do we get young people into this conversation? How do we bring young people, you know, I've got two at home, they're 17 and 20, and they vote yes, and absolutely, but that's because we do have these conversations. How do you bring youth of Scotland to be more confident about expressing their feelings of being European, because I think they feel themselves European, but they're shy and the support is not there for them. Thank you.
Another question, please. Maybe let's take two at a time. Someone at the front.
Hi, my name's Marion Robertson. Great to have the panel here. A question about leadership, because I think that's one of the things that we really, really are lacking at the moment. At this juncture, when we're looking at a year out from Holyrood elections, I think one of the things that really has to happen is that we have leadership on independence front and centre. You were all electrified by going to Brussels, as I was when I first went there too. I wonder if our leadership in the independence parties should take a visit to Brussels and be electrified, as you were, about being part of Europe, even though it's not official, but it's beckoning. I think that would help electrify younger people again in the same way as this lady has talked about here. We really need very visionary and energetic leadership running up to the Holyrood election. I wonder if you could maybe respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's start answering. Heather, do you want to start, and then Alan, and then we can take it from here with the conversation?
Well, the SNP launched the campaign. We're 1 year away from the Holyrood election, and all the candidates were selected. Alan and I are lucky enough to be selected as candidates. We'll be going through the next 12 months fighting as hard as possible to make the case for the SNP and independence in Europe. It has to be absolutely part of the manifesto and how we see ourselves as a country. One of the things that was discussed was the European Union is always a bit compromised because it has to talk to the sovereign state, so they have to talk to the UK, and there will be negotiations. Well, there are ongoing negotiations at the moment about the trade, the treaties that are being discussed at the moment, and one of the things that we were talking about was asking them to not just take the UK view, but to ask in the negotiations what were the views of the regions. You know, what was Scotland saying, what Northern Ireland saying, what was Wales saying, so that they were trying to continually force the UK to represent all four parts of this so-called United Kingdom and not just take the UK view. So I think they can be more probing in their questioning. And I think what we have to do is just constantly make the case for what young people are losing out. In answer to your question, those two young women were great. You know, it's saying, we're so sorry that you're not here and enjoying the benefits that we have. So we need people like that talking about the benefits that our young people are getting and bringing that back to life. We experienced grief when we left. And I think we're back up and resilient and fighting again. And the great thing about this group and this organisation was it's grassroots, so it's the grassroots taking hold of that European dream and bringing it back to life and engaging with people that will give it the energy it needs to get it over the line.
Alan?
Thank you. I'd pick up on the question about young people being involved. I think young people are brand new. I think young people are a lot smarter and savvy than they're given credit for. The issue is that they don't view themselves in ideological party political terms. They view about issues. It's about climate change, it's about Gaza, it's about what's going on in the West Bank, wherever else it might be. And I'll say something really controversial right now. QAnon, MAGA, all of that stuff, that actually gives me hope that people in the wider population do want to feel engaged and involved and informed. Now, I'm not part of any of those things, but the fact that that exists tells me that people are looking to be part of stuff, are looking to be involved. So it's up to us on, call it the Yes movement, call it the pro-EU movement, call it what you like. We need to tell a better story. And to my mind, we need to get away from the dry constitutional stuff. And I'm a lawyer, I love that stuff. I really love that stuff. But if I actually want to talk to people in the pub about something that's interesting, I need to talk about international solidarity. I need to talk about, I did Erasmus in Heidelberg in 1992. You don't get to do that anymore because that happened. How do we fix that? You could get that back by doing this and this and this. What are you doing to make it happen? And I think people are very, very willing to be activated and active when they're actually given something that's actually going to happen Which brings me to the point about leadership for the independence campaign.
Can I interrupt you there very quickly just to also get more questions? How do we make sure, because young people, obviously, I want to talk more about them because young people face a lot of challenges. There's a lot on their minds, you know, housing, education, climate change, etc. So how do we make the European Union and the prospect of being back in the EU something that they talk about and think about and that will drive their votes? Do any member of the panel want to react?
I'll give it a go, Asa. Somebody once said that you know, it's a real shame if you're not interested in politics because politics is very interested in you. And for young people, I mean, the reason they've got no chance of ever buying their own home is because of politics. You know, the reason, I mean, I've got a lot of relatives down in England, as you can tell from my accent. The reason people leave university with a millstone of debt around their neck is because of politics. And politics can be changed, but only if you get into it and, you know, lobby and campaign and, you know, all the rest of it. On Marlene's point about the dialogue between Scotland and Europe, that's really, really important. And for one thing, we would love if this event could become, this process could become an annual thing. We'd really like that. First challenge is next year, raising the funds. So please give generously on your way out. Plus also, May the 9th might be a bit difficult because both Alan and Heather are a bit busy up until May the 6th next year. But we'll see what we can do. But also, several MEPs expressed an interest in coming to Scotland and talking to the Scottish Government or to MSPs about what's different about Scotland. There's the point Heather made that the TCA is about to be renegotiated. Who is speaking for Scotland? Yeah, so there's a few points.
That's a really good question, actually. That's a really good point. Who are going to be Scotland's allies in this, you know, in the EU? Andrea, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, I mean, I think we have seen in the videos that there is quite a lot of allies in Europe and there is quite a lot of sympathy. And I think one thing that we need to all keep in mind is that there is never going to be a lack of support from Europe. The problem is not Europe. The problem is London. And this is also important when we think about the young people lack of motivation. Now, in my professional life, I study motivation. I'm a neuroscientist, and I see that when people don't see anything that is possible to reach, they get demotivated. And if you think that people have been campaigning for stopping climate change, and now we are going backwards in the fight against climate change, they are every Saturday in the street for Gaza, and the UK government keeps selling weapons to the Israeli government. So people in Scotland campaign for independence. The referendum never comes. These things are depressing politically. And we are seeing now in England, in particular, a rise of people that don't work, don't go to university, don't do any professional training. This is a sign of political and professional apathy. So how do you change that? But I would say to you in particular, don't wait for a leader. Be the leader of the movement. Go around, campaign, bring flyers, talk to young people, tell them, let's do something together.
And just, I'm going to pass this along, but the thing that was amazing to us was they said it is difficult for us to go to the European Union because of the politics of dealing with the UK, but we'd love to come to you. So there are MEPs who would come here on specific things, specific themes. They want to come here and maintain those connections. And for Scotland, we've got to be more like the Irish. We need to just be at everything, talk to everybody, turn up at everything. We need to maintain those links and just keep being more like the Irish. And I don't say that often.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, not only did the MEPs agree that they wanted to have Scotland's voice heard at the reset talks. I mean, they actually offered, they were actually thinking outside the box to try to think of ways to help us. I mean, we just thought, oh, they would just say something nice about Scotland. That was our biggest hope. But they actually came up with some great ideas. So yeah, helping us have our voice heard during the reset talks. Erasmus, they were really keen on Erasmus. All of them talked about Erasmus and said, how can we persuade London, or at least Scotland and Wales, because they both want Erasmus. So maybe they can get together and do something, because that's a huge thing for them to actually get Scotland back in Erasmus. And then, as David said, the visits, theme visits on certain areas, devolved areas, obviously, but they were willing to come on a regular basis and starting in the autumn to try to negotiate and actually talk to people in the Scottish government who are interested to find out how our voice can be heard more in Europe.
Okay, can get more questions? There's one here, and then here, and then here. Let's take two. Maybe the two at this table, please. Over there, yeah. And then we'll come to you.
Thank you. My name is Bill. I took the point that Heather mentioned that we don't really understand, no comprehension about the total value and worth of our energy, our green energy. And Alan made the point about how an independent Scotland would have a very, very strong export and cooperation with Europe on that. But Westminster's stealing a march.
Yep.
It's already laying cables down the North Sea. They're doing deals with the EU right now to take interconnectors across the shortest span across from Norfolk. Where are the politicians? You know, when are the SNP going to grab that and not have a repeat of the Macron report, which hid the value of Scottish oil from us for 30 years?
Yes.
We should be on the front foot, day in, day out on this. And the opportunities for young people, cooperation with universities in Europe to develop our wave and tidal. What's happening from Westminster on that? Absolutely nothing. They go for the easy options first. And our industry, we've got potential here. So the question is, when are the SNP going to get off their backsides, enumerate, put figures, pounds in real worth, on an annual basis, what is green energy worth? Because Westminster know what it's worth, but they won't tell us.
Thank you. My name is Mike Sibley. It's a question about the British media, the dreadful British media. Virtually everything we've heard about in the room tonight, you would simply have no idea of it if you focused on London-dominated media. So, for example, the view that we hear about all the time is that the SNP and Scottish independence are completely finished now, totally defeated, and we don't have to think about it anymore. Similarly, as you all know, Brexit is a word that's completely forbidden. You're not allowed to speak about it, and you've got no idea of any of the issues that we're talking about. What can we or any of us do to try and circumvent that? Is there anything we can do? Because it's really quite a conspiracy of silence at the moment. It's quite dreadful.
Mm-hmm. So I think from the questions we hear a very real worry that Scotland's potential is, being wasted in this moment. It's all very dreadful, but it could be an opportunity for Scotland to have a meaningful role in Europe. And also how, in this media environment, with these narratives, how do you even, start thinking very seriously and engaging about that? So what's your secret about thinking about all this?
I'm not going to speak all the time, but we had a North East Assembly a couple of weekends ago, and I've certainly been banging on and on about the fact that Scotland's got all of the energy and none of the power. And as a councillor, I'm sitting in meetings being advised of the steps that NIS were making, the National Energy Systems Operator, and how they're doing all the engineering to extract the energy from Scotland and send it south. So I'm acutely conscious of the scale of the extraction that is going on at the moment. And it's like the situation with Europe. If we were an independent in Europe, we would be trading with the European Union. That asset would be valued. At the moment, that asset is being extracted, and we're paying higher energy prices than anybody else. So yes, I completely share your frustration. That will be a campaigning issue. And I think the other thing is, we keep going on about the media. We didn't get to where we did in the referendum because the UK media was with us. We got to that position because of rooms like this all over the country every weekend, of communicating with people. And I think that thing about we need to get organising, get back to being that resilient campaign for independence. It's been a really tough few years, and when you go to Europe and you say, we've voted at least 8 times for the democratic right to have a referendum in Scotland, and that has been denied, that's a tough thing to overcome. And you have to keep picking yourself up and carrying on fighting, and that's what we need to do, especially in the next 12 months, to expect to see you know, having campaigning meetings and telling everybody about Scotland's power and our energy. This way.
Andrew, yeah, this way. Andrew, David, I see you nodding enthusiastically.
Yeah, I mean, on the point of the media, obviously it's a problem, but at the same time, there are some solutions. So I'll provide you some. Read the National. Tell people to read the National. Read the Byland Times, read YouTube channel, follow Independence Live, follow other media. When we launched our campaign in 2021, we published our open letter in 10 European newspapers. European newspapers are inclined to talk about Scotland, and even more so since Brexit. So if the UK media fail, read, listen, and promote other media. There is plenty in the world.
I'm not sure I can build much on that, but I would say never underestimate the power of conversation, one-to-one conversation. So I consistently find every time we're out on the street talking to people, you can chip away, kick one of the legs that supports the union or current political arrangements. They can be changed, but only through debate and dialogue and talking to people. So that's why we need as many people as possible to be joining activist groups and getting out there on the street and having those one-to-one conversations with people.
Alien?
This one's still working, or is it?
The most dangerous thing in Scotland, a politician with a microphone. There you go. The point about energy, everything Heather says, it is utterly outrageous to me that when I was MP for Stirling, I would get emails from pensioners who could see the Brazedoon wind farm from their house saying, why the hell are my energy bills going up? Has the wind stopped blowing? Has wind got more expensive? The UK is operating to a deeply broken system. And I think your point about the SNP being more active on that point, I take it. I do take it. And it's not as straightforward because energy policy isn't straightforward, but if we are going to be Europe's green renewable powerhouse, we need to do things differently than we're doing, because the UK model is not going to deliver what we need. It's also not going to deliver the social outcomes we need in terms of cheaper energy costs. So that is something I am deeply committed to, and I commit to you now that energy is going to be absolutely front and centre of the Holyrood campaign. Because I don't want to see, and I'll put my party hat on now rather than my pro-EU hat, I don't want to see us just campaign on being the government of Scotland in a devolved context. I want to talk about an independent Scotland in Europe and how we can change things. Because an independent Scotland will not run its energy market the way that we do right now. There will be similarities, and we'll need to work with the developers and everybody else who's involved in the sector. Government can't do it alone, but what we're doing is delivering some of the worst energy prices in Europe for some of the worst housing in Europe for draft and damp and all of that stuff, and it's shameful, and we need to do better. Absolutely so. The point about the media, I've spent 20 years as an elected politician, and the media will do what it does. All my experience about the media is if you tell a better story, they'll tell that as well. And we have got in the Yes Movement, putting my Yes Movement hat back on, an independent Scotland, the transformational change that that will bring to our society and our economy by being independent and getting back into the EU, that's a story nobody else can tell. That's a story Reform can't tell, Labour can't tell, the Tories can't tell, we can tell. I think that's really exciting. And if we tell people what it means for Hamilton College, Stirling University, Fife College, getting back into the EU will allow you to fund X thousand more apprenticeship programmes by being part of the ESF.
Can we an answer for some as well?
I could go on, I could go on.
A couple, like a very quick question. No, we need to wrap it up. Okay, so make it super, super quick, but after Sam.
Sorry? I will try to be very quick. Hello, everybody. I am Jorge Jimeno, lobbyist in Brussels.
an activist for Scottish independence since a lot of time.
Can we go really, really, really straight to the question, and then I want the ladies at the back.
So, really quickly, if we put this cause on a political side, left or right, I don't care, we will kill it. So it's about consensus, and it's about looking on real support. I am very happy and very appreciate all the voices that we hear today. However, let's take into consideration that they are not representatives of any European government. So I know that it's very tough now, but my question is, how, with the actual situation in Scotland, can we influence decision makers in Europe?
Great, thank you very much. One person at the back, Oh. This way, this way, this way. We're rooting for you, yay!
Thank you. I'm Kieran van Sweden. I'm an SNP councillor in Aberdeen. What I want to know is, for the people who are running this event, when are you coming to Aberdeen? Ken Fit Loons and Quines.
Thank you very much. Can we get... Sorry, did I miss someone who...
Yes, you.
Oh, yeah.
Put your hand up.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Fiona Constable. I just wondered what your thoughts were on the position from America, from the Trump administration, what view you think they might have of Scottish independence, given that... given that Trident exists and the UK leased their warheads from them. Thank you.
So I'm being told we literally have 2 minutes to talk about Trump, what could be done realistically to rejoin the EU, and how about having this next conversation in Aberdeen?
Aberdeen, yeah. Well, I can say something about that. I understand that the next SNP conference is in Aberdeen, and we'd very much like to have a shared side event to actually do the same thing in Aberdeen.
I'll pick up on the Trump point very briefly, because it's a wider question. Independence for Scotland isn't just about us. There are implications for a lot of other people. Look at the European map. Look at what climate change is going to do to the northern route over the Arctic and through us. Russian subs and Chinese boats are going to be coming through very fast, very soon. In geopolitical terms, really soon. We are too strategic to pretend that this conversation doesn't interest other people. And that's where in 2012, the SNP changed its policy on NATO and became pro-NATO, saying, we can't just go dark, we're too important. And we're still, the SNP, a deeply anti-nuclear party, but we want to be part of a wider framework. And what we've seen in Sweden and Finland, I think, has vindicated that position. But we cannot pretend, and we should not kid ourselves, other people outside of Scotland have a view on what we're trying to do. Yeah, we can't just pretend it's ourselves alone. And that's where I see some of the Yes movement being just a little bit self-indulgent, kidding themselves on that we can decide what we want and it'll just happen. No, it will not. I want to see Scotland independent in order to join things that exist. I want to see independent Scotland be a voice for progress within things that exist.
I have to cut you in 5 seconds.
That's why I'm independent, mind you.
Well done.
I don't want to talk about Trump.
Me neither. Oh my gosh, it's too late for that. Guys.
Are you wanting us to speak on? Yeah. Yeah. Aberdeen sorted. Trump will change his mind every second day. But we the point, I don't know if any of you have seen The Diplomat, you know, when the second season, the strategic importance of Scotland should not be underestimated, and people will be looking at what we're doing. We're going to have to be conscious about misinformation, you know, propaganda one way or another. We have to make the case for our own independence, and yet again, not underestimate how important we are strategically and in terms of our assets. That's what we keep losing sight of. We have to keep remembering how valuable and strategic we are.
Well, my considered judgment of Trump is that he's a fascist. He doesn't like democracy. He doesn't like empowerment of the people. So he's not our friend. He's not a friend of all of us here. in fact, his best friend is Farage. And Farage has, not good ideas about Scotland and will never want Scottish independence to happen. What I would say, though, is that I agree with all of you that Scotland matters. And this is what we told MEPs. Scotland matters, particularly because in the present moment, democracy is on the brink. Scotland can help strengthen democracy in Europe, has the right values, defends the rule of law, so it's strategically extremely important for Europe and for the world. And solidarity to Belarus, because I forgot to say that earlier, we need more international solidarity, and for that also Scotland matters.
Well said. Well, on Aberdeen, we did actually run an event at an AIM conference a couple of years back, and we'd love to do something like that again, as well as a potential fringe event at party conferences, whatever. And on Trump, that man's going to do so much damage to his economy that I'd be surprised if he makes the 4 years out. And he's going to turn his party into an unelectable mess. Well, it already is, I think. They've got no chance of winning in 4 years' time, so let's focus on the future and not on the current day.
Well, thank you so much. We could continue talking about this for hours and hours and hours, but we still need to have dinner, I think. I still need to have dinner. But thank you all so much for coming, and thank you all so much to the stage and the organizers. Thank you.
Right. So we have one last video to share with you, and this one is a bit of a mashup of greatest hits. As well as the MEPs you've seen already, we were able to talk to some various advisors and other staff who were prepared to give us their opinions to camera. And we were so overwhelmed with the positivity of what we were hearing, we wanted those voices to be heard as well. So this next video is, as I say, a mashup of the greatest hits of that time in Brussels.
Westminster, English politicians are sort of telling us that it would take probably 10 years to get back into the EU. And is that true? It would take 10 years? No?
I don't know how many years, but I know that there's the willing. It must be. So it must happen. So I think that we have to work together in order to reduce this kind of years that they say that it will be 10 or more years. I think this is not the problem, how many years. I think the problem is not to be here in the European Union. So we have to work together in order to have you here. So if we have the will and we have the political will, you can see that we arrange a lot of people, a lot of crises that they said that they were impossible, like the COVID or the Ukraine war and everything, and we responded. So we can create specific laws, specific ways to come Scotland back to you. No? Okay. Thank you. You're welcome.
Scotland could join in a fast-track procedure. It would take less than 2 years.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
And what would that route be?
Well, first of all, you need to solve your mandate within the United Kingdom. And in the moment you would be an independent state, you could immediately apply for accession talks. And what I know from the administration and from my colleagues, there would be a big welcoming mood to go into fast-track negotiations to rejoin you to the European Union.
And from what I could gather from the chat in the room there, you yourself might think about coming over for a visit to Scotland?
Yes, I've been to Scotland several times. It's a fantastic country to visit, fantastic people, and I'm open to come over again, yes, because I think it's important that citizens understand that Scotland is very welcome here in the European Union, and I think that message needs to be spread.
Fantastic. Could you maybe say a few words about how Brexit affected both the European Union and your constituency in particular?
Well, Brexit mainly affected UK itself. For the European Union, it was hurtful to lose an important partner or important partners because it's 4 nations at the end of the day that we lost with this one Brexit vote. And especially painful was to see that big parts of United Kingdom actually voted in favor of remaining in the European Union, and that vote was not counted or not taken into account the way it should have been.
Are you aware that we're still campaigning in Scotland to get back in? Is that well known?
Yes, Scotland is still known here as very pro-European, and we're keeping channels, and we're not giving up.
Neither are we.
Yeah,
Absolutely not.
So it's great, Valentina. It's so nice being able to, well, meet you, but it gives us another chance to say thank you so much for helping get this meeting off the ground and organised. And what have your own impressions been today?
Well, I think they've been incredibly positive. I think everyone who we have spoken to has a clear will of Scotland coming back to the EU. I think there's a clear willingness to work as well. It's just not empty words, which is really reassuring. And I think there's a clear roadmap as well of the people who want to be part of the return of Scotland and what they can do for us and what we can do for Scotland as well. And I think for the moment it's been incredibly positive, and mainly the energy that the people are giving, how much they miss us and how much like our Scottish MEPs are missed. It's incredibly positive.
So if you've got some message to the people of Scotland who are going to be watching this video, what would you say?
Well, I would say we're waiting for you. Hasta llevar. En Soar Alba, en Visca Catalunya.
Yeah.
Lovely. No, but yes, mainly the Scots are European. This is who we are. We belong here. Our nation is European, and we shouldn't have never been left out of the EU. So it's magnificent that at some point we will be able to come back, and we will come back as an independent country.
So I just really loved it when you said just now we're just waiting for you to come back.
Yes, I can't wait for Scotland to come back. Yeah.
You can imagine how uplifting the day was just to hear those voices, the affection and the enthusiasm for Scotland. It was a fantastic experience. Now, we're moving towards a close, and as Elise explained during her opening, we're joined here tonight by Corcab Stewart, who is the MSP for Glasgow Kelvin and has been since 2021, and is also the candidate for Glasgow's South Side in 2026. She's currently the Minister for Equalities, but in the past, she was also served as Minister for Europe. So we're very grateful that you've attended tonight, Corcab. Please, the stage is all yours. We'd love to hear from you.
Oh, you look absolutely gorgeous. Can I just say that from here? You're all looking wonderful. What a warm and sort of productive and positive conversations and videos that we've had tonight. So can I thank the organisers for Yes for EU for inviting me along to this special event to mark Europe Day. I can see that this is going lower. Being only 5'2", it's always a bit of a challenge in that height bit. But as you know, and it's been said already tonight, nearly 9 years ago now, Scotland overwhelmingly voted in the Brexit referendum to remain in the EU and left no doubt that Scotland's place is at the heart of Europe alongside its European partners. Scotland voted to keep all the freedoms and the benefits the EU membership brings. Scotland voted to have the freedom to work, to study, and to travel throughout Europe. Scotland voted to remain part of the largest free trading bloc in the world. And Scotland voted to share all of this with our fellow Europeans. So that was very, very clear. Reflecting on the videos, I'll try and pepper it through so that I can actually respond to some of the points that were brought up as well. There were MEPs on Scotland's sort of standards and everything. So I just wanted to reassure you that this is why the Scottish Government is committed to rejoining the EU as an independent nation. But in the meantime, the government's policy is to work closely with our EU neighbours and stay as close to the EU friends as possible. We seek to remain aligned with EU law wherever possible, and it's meaningful to do so, to maintain and protect the highest regulatory standards, and while noting that nothing can substitute for the benefits of the European Union membership, it is also why the Scottish Government is engaging proactively in the current process of EU-UK dialogue to seek to make improvements to relationships in trade and in other areas. So we're here today on Europe Day, and my colleagues and friends here have talked about how it all came about. But I just wanted to sort of, I can't express it better than they did. And I think we've realized very much so that we actually committed the greatest harm that was ever done by a Brexit, a failed project. And yet our values and our commitment to Europe has remained steadfast throughout that time. And indeed, I'm feeling that it is indeed growing in the backdrop of the ever division that is around us. On Europe Day, it's an ideal opportunity for us to focus our minds on sorting out our own sovereignty, and we've heard that loud and clear, so we better get a wiggle on with that, and I can assure you that we will be. And we want to take our place back at the European Union table with all the social, all the cultural, and the economic opportunities that that will bring. So on Europe Day, I want us to build that wave of hope that is going to wash away that wall of Brexit division. And that's what we will continue to aim to do. The videos that we've seen, they were just absolutely excellent sort of like snapshots of how others see us. And it's always nice, and I'll weave in a little bit of a response to the media there. These days, a lot of people actually get their sources of information from fellow human beings, academics, research, and we must be mindful that actually the traction with traditional media is actually at an all-time low. And yet they're not learning the lessons. At some point, you would have thought that people would reflect and think maybe we should write articles that people are interested in and give them information and proper investigative journalism. And that actually does occur. There are excellent journalists that do all those pieces. But unfortunately, we do have the tabloid sort of like headlines and things. But as I think Heather said, other people said, we've always had that. That is nothing new. And if you're watching our First Minister very carefully, he is actually going out and reaching the people. He is everywhere. He is attending events. He's bypassing all that. We've never relied on the media in the past. We have our own voice. Let's just use our own voice and speak directly to the people in that sense. So, moving on a little bit, I'm sort of like, I've totally lost where I am, as I knew I would be. Another anniversary that I can't help but refer to, of course, yesterday we marked the 80 years since VE Day, and since the end of the Second World War in Europe, this is a moment, of course, to reflect, commemorate the heroic efforts that went into liberating Europe from fascism, and to remember that the European idea and the project was built on the ashes of a devastating war between neighbours. And since the Schuman Declaration was signed, Europe has become that symbol of strength and unity, and war between EU members has become more or less unthinkable. The values of EU stand for unity, cooperation, respect, and of course, for the universality of human dignity, human rights, freedoms, democracy, equality, and the rule of law, all of which is under threat, all of which should galvanize us to focus our mind on all of the above that I have just mentioned. So today, support for these values, along with the liberal international order that we've lived under for decades, are under great stress, as I've just mentioned, and that global instability, the conflict, economic uncertainty are having an impact everywhere, including in Scotland. And at that time of increasing geopolitical uncertainty, the Scottish Government welcomes and supports the UK's intent, the UK government's intent to seek improved relations with the EU. There are many areas in which a closer partnership to the EU has potential to deliver mutual benefits for the people of Scotland and the whole of the UK, as well as the people of Europe. And we, as a government, have been very, very clear on what we are seeking in the forthcoming talks and the Leaders' Summit in May, which I think was referred to by the panels. So just to reassure you that the Scottish Government will be representing Scotland's interests at those meetings and at that table. I think somebody asked that question on whether that was happening. We recently published position papers on Youth Mobility Agreement, Erasmus+, which has been mentioned quite a few times, also Creative Europe, closer energy and climate cooperation, and on the core needs of course, the veterinary, food and drink agreement with the EU. And we will shortly be publishing another paper on addressing trade barriers as well. And we know, it's been expressed here, how crucial it is that Scottish interests are fully reflected in the EU, in the UK government's negotiating positions with the EU. And, you know, believe me, we will continue to argue for those robustly, and we'll be seeking for improvements in trade and other areas which offer benefits, in our opinion, to all parties, actually. Scotland has been, and in particular in these times of uncertainty, will continue to be a constructive partner. The Scottish Government is ready to work with the UK and the EU towards stability and progress, and we're keen to support the rebuilding of relations through skills, reputation and networks, and in key areas of devolved competence such as energy, life sciences, and of course commerce as well. We know that Scotland's place is in the EU. You know, the warmth is just wonderful to feel. There's no doubt about that. It's not just, I think, Heather, a candlelight that was sort of there, but for tonight, I'm feeling that actually that candle has sort of like increased into sort of like a burning, if not yearning fire that is waiting for us to come back in that. So resetting of relations will, of course, never, ever replace the mutual benefit of full membership of the European Union. The Scottish Government, and of course my position as well on this, is unwavering. Scotland is a proud European nation with a long and proud internationalist tradition, and we will continue to thrive to be a good global citizen, often leading the way. We will remain steadfast in our aim to rejoin the EU as an independent country, alongside our European friends, to be at the heart of Europe and to sit with our friends to work together for the benefit of this continent. So I will close by wishing each and every one of you a happy Europe Day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Minister. That was really interesting, and especially to know about the TCA talks and all the initiatives from the Scottish Government. So that's brilliant. If you can bear with us for another, we're already running 5 minutes late. If you can bear with us a few more minutes, we're going to wrap up this evening with a few comments, last remarks from people involved in the project. And so from our point of view of Yes4EU, we are completely buoyed up by our trip to Brussels and what we heard from MEPs. So we're ready for the next steps, and we are going to work throughout this year all the way to the Holyrood election. We know from polling carried out by Believe in Scotland, actually, that if you add EU membership, if you ask people whether they want to be independent, they'll it's 50-50. If you say independence with EU membership, it jumps up by 10 points. So you get in the 60s. So we're going to have a job next year to talk to the people in Scotland, when we're going to make sure that they hear that they are welcome back. The people of Scotland are welcome back in the EU. So that's what we're going to do over the next 12 months. Andrea, do you want to sum up for less than a minute? 1 minute.
In time, with war, democratic backsliding, climate catastrophe. And if you think of it, Scotland is a bit an antidote to all of this. There is a proud democratic tradition, clean energy powerhouse, master-class tradition in respect of the rule of law. So really, Scotland can be that message of hope that the world is waiting for. And if next year you elect a pro-independence, pro-European majority in the Scottish Parliament, Europe will rejoice, and that message of hope will arrive. So roll up your sleeves and go and do it.
Thank you. Thank you. And we've got Heather and Alan, or both together to wrap up? Or yeah, probably with them.
Okay, I'll go first. The one on that very last day in the European Parliament, we heard from a Holocaust survivor. I did a lot of crying in Europe, as I've already told you, but this woman talked about the fact that it was incredible to sit in a room in the European Parliament where there's simultaneous translations. So there's all these countries, all these languages, and we're all communicating in real time with one another through simultaneous translation. Because as she explained, that in the concentration camps, there was no translation. So there were Jews from all over Europe that had been brought together that didn't share a common language. So such a powerful testimony to what Europe was about after that war. And that's what the VE celebration should have been talking about, the triumph of Europe and our place in that. So it was very moving. Leaving Europe left us bereft. It was a complete denial of what we wanted to do. I keep saying we are in exile. We have been in exile for, since the day we had to leave in 2020, but we are not alone. And there are people who want to welcome us back, and we have got connections there, and we have to maintain and enrich and strengthen those connections and be like the Irish and turn up everywhere and invite everybody here and show them a really good time and make sure that we're connected. And I think my final point is the wonderful thing about Europe is they see us as we really are. So they reflect back to us the best in us. They see us as democrats. They see us as people who want to contribute constructively. They see us as reliable trading partners who share their values. They see us strategic to defence. They see ourselves. They see us as we should see ourselves. And our job in Scotland is to help reflect that positive view of ourselves to everybody in Scotland and go back to where we belong, at the heart of Europe.
I told you there'd be furious agreement this evening. I think Heather's a fantastic advocate for Dundee, but also for Scotland in Europe. She's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant advocate for the cause. Thank you tonight. I'll give you 2 quotes, and do please take them away. The first one is that history is made by the people who turn up. You turned up tonight. And in a bleak world where lots of people are doing their best to not turn up, to not watch the news, to walk away, to be as ignorant as possible, we've got the story that's actually more appealing, more interesting, and more attractive. So you're part of that. Please help us help you. The second phrase, and I'll be a wee bit more controversial, Heather might not want to be part of this one, but it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. If you want to see the Yes movement doing something, bloody do it, eh? Don't wait for somebody else to. If you think that a party needs to do something more, get in touch with the people who make those decisions and call for it. Make it happen, and don't be bought off with flannel. I was deeply, deeply proud to support a cross-party grassroots movement effort into Brussels. It wasn't my delegation, it wasn't Heather's delegation, it was Yes for EU and Europe for Scotland's delegation. And that's where I think we need to get back to. COVID knocked us sideways, all sorts of things have knocked us sideways. Activism will breed activity. Be that change you want to see, and I am so proud to support, and I offer my unending support to Yes, Europe for Scotland and Yes for EU, because if it's about getting Scotland back into the EU, we might not be entirely sure of the roadmap, but we know where the destination is. That's half the battle. You're part of that, and it's been really exciting to be part of this project and part of what's going to come next. It's so exciting. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's fab. Okay, so this is the end of our evening, and thank you so much for coming along. You have some little post-it notes on your tables. We would love to have your feedback. So maybe a few words about how you felt, or maybe a question that is still unanswered, and maybe ideas about next steps. So anything you feel you might want to contribute, please write it on your post-it. It's a bit small, so maybe at the back as well, or maybe on several post-it notes. There are sheets of paper at in the foyer where you can stick your post-it note on the way out or leave them on the tables. And happy Europe Day. Thank you. Colleagues. Thank you. I need support here on stage. Thank you, David. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Morag. Thank you, Peter. All the tech from Peter. And thank you, Elise. Thank you very much. Leslie at the back.